सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen though.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
I'm with Abdul Balkhi, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. I'm here in his office in Kabul. It's a really lovely office, large room. You can see the flag of the Islamic Emirate behind us. It's got the Shahada printed on it. And of course, the plates of dry fruit. So it's wonderful to be back in Kabul. And thank you so much, Mr. Balkhi, for speaking to the Print.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
My first question to you, Mr. Balkhi, is that the Islamic Emirate is celebrating 1 year of coming to power on the 15th of August. And that is also India's Independence Day. So as India celebrates 75 years of independence, the Taliban celebrates 1 year. Do you have a comment on that?
It's a very big coincidence for us to be celebrating our Independence Day on the same day. We congratulate India on their Independence Day, and we are also very glad and happy that Afghanistan has finally regained its sovereignty after 43 years of conflict, of which nearly 30 years has been foreign occupations. The recent one being the US occupation of our country.
But do you feel that the conflict is fully over, but because there still seems a lot of fear on the streets of Kabul?
The conflict is over. There is and always will be in human societies criminal elements and criminal syndicates that try to disturb the peace. But we as the government of Afghanistan will continue our efforts in order to neutralize those threats.
I have two questions to you on the situation, on the civil situation. The first is that the killing of the Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul less than a fortnight ago. Now, what was he doing here in Kabul, and what's your reaction to that?
The government of Afghanistan has made its position very clear, which is that the leadership did not and was not aware of either Mr. Zawahiri's arrival nor his presence in Kabul. We do not agree with the assessment of the United States about his presence. We will continue our investigation and try to substantiate facts from fiction. That investigation is ongoing. Okay. When it is finished, we will come out with the conclusions.
But you were surprised that he was taken out in that attack?
We do not agree with that assessment. We do not believe that we were not aware, our leadership was not aware, neither about his arrival nor about his presence in Kabul.
So you're not confirming or denying that al-Zawahiri was killed here in Kabul?
We have not substantiated that Mr. Zawahiri was indeed here in Kabul. We have not come to that conclusion.
Okay. Now, a few days ago, a senior Taliban ideologue, Rahimullah Haqqani, was killed, and that killing was ascribed to ISIS. What's your comment on that?
Again, criminal elements will continue to target government officials, places of worship. This group has been engaged in violence against innocent people across Afghanistan.
You're talking about the ISIS?
Yes, indeed. They have cells, but the government has been able to and successful to a very large extent in neutralizing those cells and also in containing that group. And we will continue our efforts until they are completely eliminated from Afghanistan.
But why is the Islamic State targeting the Islamic Emirate? I mean, you are a Muslim government now in power. You follow the Quran Sharif. Why is the Islamic State, is it that they believe that they're purer Muslims than you?
Well, that is the Islamic State or ISIS or Daesh or the different names they use. They are a sect which believes that they are the only Muslims on the face of this planet, and they excommunicate majority of the Muslims, the Sufis, the other Muslims that ascribe to different interpretation. But the important and significant point is that they have no support inside Afghanistan.
You spoke about the Sufis, Mr. Balkhi. Now, would you say that in the Islamic Emirate, all kinds of people believing all kinds of religions, and by that I mean Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims who ascribe to different sort of philosophies within Islam, are they all welcome to live here peacefully, side by side?
Of course, Afghanistan is the shared home of all Afghans. We have minority groups here as well, including the Hindus and Sikhs. They have a long history in Afghanistan. The government of Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate, in our first rule and even now have provided them with protection. We have actually returned back the properties that were usurped and taken by force by the previous administration from them in Jalalabad and in other places. And we will continue this policy moving forward.
You're talking about the Sikhs who are in Jalalabad who lost their properties under the previous dispensation?
Yes, absolutely. That's who I'm referring to. And Afghanistan is the shared home of all, whether it's the different ethnicities or different beliefs. So long as they're Afghans, this is their home.
So if I, as a Hindu, if I come to Afghanistan and live here, I would be given equal protection, equal rights, equal security as my Muslim sisters and brothers?
Absolutely. All citizens of Afghanistan and also those that come from foreign countries on valid visas and proper documentation will be afforded security and protection, just as in any other state in the world.
But in that case, Mr. Balkhi, why is it that your first anniversary is marred by so many protests, especially by women? I mean, they are your citizens of Afghanistan, but why is it that women are not being given equal rights?
The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan has given and is committed to giving every citizen of Afghanistan their Islamic rights. In a society, any human society, there will always be differences of opinion and differences on how to govern and which laws to enact that regulate the lives of people.
Okay.
Currently, the government is trying to address some of the concerns that the citizens of Afghanistan have.
But when you talk about these concerns, I think you know what the concerns are, and the women have made it quite clear that girl children not being allowed to go to school beyond class 6. I mean, that is anathema, isn't it? And should be to Islam, actually.
The important point is that the policy of the Islamic Emirate is education for all citizens of Afghanistan, irrespective of their gender. Currently, girls are attending up to grade 6 in all Afghanistan. Women and men are attending universities.
But why not after grade 6?
And after grade 6, schools are open in more than a dozen provinces across Afghanistan. The issue has different elements to it. It is cultural constraints, it's budgetary, it's lack of infrastructure, books and other resources, and the availability of those for the students. The government is working extremely hard to try to address those problems so all schools and all education centers can reopen.
You have young children. I mean, obviously they're not, they're not old enough to go to grade 7. But you would agree, right, that girl children should go to school from grade 7 and above till they graduate?
That is the policy of the Islamic Emirate, that all citizens of Afghanistan, irrespective of their age or gender, have the right to education.
But they're not going to school, Mr. Balkhi, after grade 7 and above. They're not. They're sitting at home or they're going to the madrasas to study the Quran Sharif, which is wonderful, but they're not going to school. Boy children are going to school, but not girl children.
They're going in secondary schooling, they're going to schools in more than a dozen provinces of Afghanistan.
Okay.
And we have stated that the policy of the Islamic Emirate is education for all citizens of Afghanistan, irrespective of their gender.
Okay.
And the technical and cultural and other aspects that are interrelated, the international dimension and local dimension, the government is working extremely hard to try to address those and reopen schools across the country.
So you think this will happen sooner than later?
The policy, that is the important aspect. The policy is education for all citizens of Afghanistan.
Now, you know that less than 24 hours ago, there was a protest right here in the heart of Kabul, not far from your office in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. When women were protesting, a handful of women, 35 or 40 women, were protesting. Actually, they were not protesting freedoms, but food, work, the right to work. And the Taliban guards fired in the air. Now, is that a way to disperse your own citizens?
The protests, according to the laws of Afghanistan, have to be coordinated with the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior in order for us to provide protection for those protests to take place. These were protests that were unsanctioned, that were not allowed. There was no coordination with the government. Yes, we do acknowledge that our security needs to be trained better on how to handle such spontaneous protests that do erupt. But overall, again, the most important thing is that no one was hurt and the crowds were controlled, and no unfortunate incident took place that could have ruined lives and threatened the lives of ordinary citizens of Afghanistan.
Now, I hear a lot of reports, especially outside Kabul in the provinces, where Taliban guards are instilling fear into young women, calling them to the police station, saying you're walking without a mehram, which is a family male escort. But actually, the young girls haven't done anything wrong. And these young girls have spoken to me and have experienced their feelings of fear and helplessness. How would your government address that?
Again, I'm not going to argue with you whether the reports or the individuals that have relayed to you their experiences. I'm not going to challenge that, but the policy of the government of Afghanistan is that no men or women, they will not be stopped for leaving their homes. So I do not believe that such incidents have taken place, but even if they have, again, this is a human society. And we've gone through 43 years of conflict. If such incidents have indeed taken place, the best approach for those individuals is to approach the relevant ministries, the relevant police stations, and register their cases of abuse or otherwise, and let the government address those in a very professional and responsible manner.
So you do accept that they could have taken place, but that they will be addressed by the government in a responsible and professional manner, and that you would apologize for this on behalf of these Taliban guards who could have done something bad.
Again, this is a human society. This is a nation of 40 million people. There will be and there will continue to be incidents. The responsibility of the government is to hold individuals accountable for violating the laws of this country, and we will continue in our pursuit to better the governance structure and provide security and protection to our citizens.
So let me just go back to last year, 1 year ago, when the Taliban walked into Kabul without firing a shot. Were you surprised that you walked into the city and the Ashraf Ghani government fled without as much as looking back to it to its own people?
The events developed in a manner that were surprising for everyone,
including for you?
For all parties. But again, what is critical and vital is that it was managed in a manner that there was no looting, there was no destruction, there was no bloodshed, and that is one of the significant achievements that we believe the government of Afghanistan, the current government, on how they handled and managed developments on such a large scale, unprecedented in the history of not only Afghanistan, but in the history of humanity.
So why do you think Ashraf Ghani left? He was the president of the Islamic Republic.
I mean, that is a question that he can best answer. I'm not, don't have the information.
No, the reason I'm asking is because along with him, there were other citizens of Afghanistan who left. According to UNHCR, more than 650,000 Afghans have fled Afghanistan over the last 1 year. Several hundreds are seeking asylum. Why are Afghans leaving the country?
This is a developing country. This is not a problem only for Afghanistan. This is a problem that is prevalent in the entire region, in our neighboring countries and in our regional countries. Human beings have a tendency to seek greener pastures, but the government has made it very clear that this is the shared home of all Afghans. The lives and honor and dignity of every Afghan is protected, and they are urged to return back to their country and contribute to the development of it.
You are urging them to return home and contribute to Afghanistan's development.
We are urging all Afghans to return back to their country and contribute to the development and prosperity of this country, yes.
And they have nothing to fear for when they come home. It's not like they will be, imprisoned or treated badly or...
No, there is an idea that is being pushed by certain actors. However, it holds no truth to it. The government, after announcing the general amnesty, has integrated 500,000 civil servants from the previous administration into the new workforce of the government of Afghanistan. So there is no reason for anyone to believe or think that they will be excluded from contributing to Afghanistan.
The fact that former President Hamid Karzai and the former chief of the Reconciliation Commission, Dr. Abdullah, the fact that they have stayed on, the two senior leaders of the former government stayed on in Kabul, what does that mean to you?
It's not only Mr. Karzai and Abdullah that have stayed behind, but there's a lot of high-profile figures from the previous administration that stayed, and the new commission created by the government for the return of some of these figures, non-figures. It currently, in the few months that it has begun its work, more than 100 individuals have returned. So this is an ongoing process, and again, the government of Afghanistan will continue to urge Afghans to return to their country and contribute to its development.
But I think people who return or who have stayed indeed feel that they may not, once they leave the country, they may not be allowed to come back, or they can't go abroad, they can't travel abroad. So can you assure people, say for example, Dr. Abdullah and President Karzai, that they will be allowed to travel back and forth, and this is their home, they will come back home?
Mr. Abdullah did leave Afghanistan, went to India to visit his family, and then he returned.
Yes.
And it is the right of every Afghan citizen, the freedom of movement. All human beings are born free, so long as they possess the proper documentation, and the country that they're going to allows and issues visas to them. Our government does not have any problems with their movement.
So my question to you, you talked about India. Now you have stated just very recently, in fact, about 24 hours ago, that you welcome the fact that India is upgrading its mission in Kabul. It was a very small technical mission, and now other diplomats are also joining. So what does this mean to you, that India, although India doesn't recognize the Islamic Emirate, but it is upgrading its mission?
The new government of Afghanistan has been recognized, and what they call the de facto recognition is that it is a reality. It is the government of Afghanistan. The upgrading of the diplomatic mission, we welcome it. We've also resumed flights with India. We're also working on resuming the visa issuance, the consular services between both countries. We have civilizational ties with India, and we believe this is steps being taken towards the de jure part, the official recognition of the new government of Afghanistan, not only by India, but the neighboring and regional and world countries as well. It is not in the interest of anyone to see Afghanistan be unstable and be a center that proves and creates challenges for other countries. Rather, it is in the interest of all to recognize the government of Afghanistan in order to realize the full potential of Afghanistan as a partner in international peace, security, and prosperity.
But last year, after the Taliban walked in, the Indian government shut down. It was like it threw a Chinese wall on the India-Afghan relationship. No visas were given to any Afghan students, although there were hundreds who were studying in India. So what did you make of that? Were you upset?
We called on all embassies to stay. Some embassies decided to stay on. Some decided that they want to suspend their operations temporarily. And India was one of those countries. They said that we need some time to reassess our approach towards Afghanistan. And we gave them a safe passage and provided them security and protection to leave. And we again welcomed their return.
So you would urge the Indian government to open the visa policy and allow students to go back and forth?
Absolutely, we urge all countries. This is an interconnected world. We are interdependent on one another, and consular services and diplomatic relations are some of the most basic necessities of all citizens.
The reason I'm coming back to this again and again is that there is a lot of concern in India that this passage of, if you open the doors in a sense, that this will create other problems, that insecurity will increase, that this passage, that terrorists, for example, could use this passage to come into India and create and foment instability inside India.
There are a lot of checks and balances and also a lot of security protocols when it comes to the issuance of passports or visas, not only by Afghanistan, but also when it comes to India. We do thorough checks. That's why passports exist. That's why visas exist. That's why there's an understanding and protocols between different countries. I do not believe that this fear is warranted. It holds no basis and it's irrational.
And that other countries could use Afghanistan's soil to create instability and perhaps foment terrorism in India.
The policy of Afghanistan, the new government of Afghanistan, is very clear when it comes to its responsibilities and commitments, which is no individual or group or other countries even will be allowed to use the territory of Afghanistan to threaten the security of other nations.
But I'm talking about specifically the TTP and the Pakistan government, that the Pakistanis bombed coast, as you know, that there is an issue there. So do you think that could have ramifications or it could have some impact on India?
These incidents happen everywhere, but the government of Afghanistan has mediated talks between the TTP and the Pakistani government, and it just goes to show that the commitments that the government of Afghanistan makes, that it takes practical steps in implementing those commitments.
Mr. Balkhi, I would like to thank you so much for your time. You've been frank and free and honest in your answers, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to me, for speaking to ThePrint. Thank you again.
It was a pleasure.
You've been frank and free and honest in your answers, and I do appreciate